All right, hello everybody. Welcome to part 2 of episode 13 of Wireheads. I'm Diamond Dust,
And I'm Emmerron.
and on this half of the episode, we are going to be talking about player agency. Now, player agency, if I had to put it in a way I can define it here, it is allowing the players the autonomy and freedom to make decisions in the game that are impactful to their play, but also at the same time, it is something that's still within the grounds of the game. This would include this would also cover the discussion of a question last week that we were asked is when the mission gets too hard or scary, and what do you do when the players kind of want to just nope out or back off? Now, when we talk about player agency, this means the players can make decisions for their characters, and at the same time, when they make these decisions, they do also have to, see what happens because of those decisions. Because if you don't have, positive or negative consequences for what happens, I mean, what's the point of the choice that was even made? Trying to think back on this, and I suppose one of the best examples I've had, which, of course, I'm not going to get into very specifics, but this has to do with one of the Tales of the Red, that the players were coming up to a point where they knew that they were going to have a difficult boss fight ahead of them, but they were kind of hitting a point of just like, well, why not turn back? And I suppose that does raise a good question of what happens when players want to make decisions that might be a little outside what the plan was for the mission. What happens when the players jump ship, or what happens when players decide to take a different route that, now you have to figure out what happens because these decisions were made.
Yep.
Didn't know if you wanted to pick up from me here, if you had something else to add in.
No, I think the discussion around player agency kind of dovetails in against kind of what we talked about in part 1 in terms of GM improv, because this is probably one of those things that can lead most often, I feel, to you needing to improvise in a scenario where you weren't expecting to. And part of the reason I say that is, like in the case of what Diamond's talking about here, hard boss fight ahead, you've got a bad feeling, you kind of know like this is gonna suck. So there are two main reasons that you as a GM are probably gonna feel this compulsion to say, no, you have to do this, right? Thing number one, it's what's in the book, which is a lame reason, but it is a reason. And it's, if you're newer, it's going to feel like a much stronger pull of like, well, I don't know what to do if I'm not doing what's written here. So I want to like enforce like this is the path, right? Which is pretty difficult to do if the player's just like, well, I'm scared. Like, I'm scared. I don't know if I want to risk this. Or maybe they've been fucked up pretty bad earlier in the mission and you're like, I don't know if I've got the strength to do what must be done or the capacity for damage to soak what damage I know I probably will end up taking. All those things kind of can factor in. So reason number two that they might make this choice is they're like, well, this cause isn't worth dying for, right? And it's less out of fear and more of just logical, like, fuck the Eddies. I don't want this. I don't want this heat. I don't want to fuck with these people that they're asking me to fuck with, or this, I'm way over my head and I wasn't expecting to be. Like, they're asking, me to do this all for 1,000 eddies, and this has turned into like a full-on street war against a gang or a corporation that I didn't sign up for and I'm not being compensated enough for. So then they choose to say, fuck my fixer, fuck the corpo that put me on this, I'm done. And they just walk. So you got two ways that you can kind of respond to this. One is to try and remind your players of why they're doing things in the first place. And it doesn't even have to be particularly specific to the mission at hand, in my opinion. I think you can do plenty where you just can kind of say, like, you're edge runners. Part of being an edge runner is doing dangerous things for money, because without that money, you won't survive, right? Rents do, your lifestyles do, like, this is all important stuff. You need this money. Or at the very least, you need to be able to, in the future, be able to make money. And your reputation will suffer if you don't do this, right? The other side of the coin is say, yeah, okay, you can leave. Nothing's stopping you. Because if nothing truly is stopping them, they could just walk. But then they'll have consequences, right? Thing number one, the reputation's definitely going to take a hit to start with, right? Thing number two, whatever force they were working for is potentially, depending on the gig at hand, gonna want to find them now and say, the fuck you do reneging on your promise. You're gonna do this now. Or they just get hunted by like a kill squad or something if the stakes are that high, right? And then the other potential thing is bad thing happens to the person that got attacked in the first place or something, as is like the case with the gig. We're talking in very non-specific terms here so as to avoid spoilers, but part of the premise of this boss fight that Diamond was mentioning is someone got kidnapped. And if you succeed, you can find them alive, right? Now you lose that opportunity. So the gig is uncompletable. You will not be paid for it. And so it's gone now from being a, well, shit, we were going to get paid, now we're not. And then to make matters worse, the next victim of this person is someone your crew is connected to much more closely. And now this fight becomes inevitable because instead of having the option to walk away now, because you're afraid and it doesn't impact you directly, now it's walked into your face. It is right there impacting you directly. And now you have no choice, right? Because to back down from that would be to abandon your principles. And that is probably the only thing you have to stand on as a edge runner, is your principles. So that's generally how I deal with that granting and taking away of player agency. Is like, there comes a point where this becomes a fight to the death for you, that there is no saying no to it because it's too personal. It's too much of a thing that you are invested in. And that should always be the case, that there is a line beyond which you cannot say no because it is just who you are as a person. Because that's true of, I think, all of us. In reality, is like, there will always be a case that pushes you over the edge to make a choice that you otherwise would not make, because it is that critically important you protect something or stand up for something.
And I agree with this, and I suppose the argument that I have been confronted with before when when Old Man Consequences comes around, is just like, why are you punishing the characters for the player's actions, or why are you punishing me for this? You are taking away my agency. And it kind of comes to that spot where, you know, as a player and as a GM, you have to understand, like, of course, where those lines are. But when things come around, this is because this is where the story has gone.
Right.
The
Well, there's
go ahead.
there's a golden rule that I have that applies to this. In the game, everything is personal. Above the table, nothing is personal.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, I, the GM, am not coming for you, the player, at the table, right? I am not against you. I am your biggest cheerleader. If you're looking to do something and succeed, I want to see it succeed, right? In the game, though, the challenges presented to you should be intensely personal. That's why you're an edge runner to begin with, right?
Yes.
So everything should matter to your character in the game. And me offering you consequences for choices is not a punishment. It is an opportunity for you to rise to the occasion.
Now, I suppose what someone else actually followed up on this question. Well, I wouldn't say followed up, but somebody else actually talked to me about this earlier this past week, Emmerron. What happens when your players keep running away? When it keeps getting too damn hot and you aren't even, breaking out the hardened baddies for this. You are following the 1-to-1 rule. One booster ganger to one edge runner. When you follow all those to a T, and yet your crew keeps running away from the issues. Where does this go?
If they're never securing the bag at the end of a mission, right? Like they're never completing the core objective, things are gonna get dire fast, right? After a number of gigs, the amount they get are gonna slow down, meaning there's more time between gigs. So sure, you might be able to hustle, and sure, you might be able to like scrounge together the remaining eddies you need for rent for a month, maybe 2. But like, it's not going to last very long. Your IP isn't going to be a very high reward at that point either from the GM, because part of the rubric we have is based on you achieving goals, right? So if you're not achieving any of the goals of the mission at hand, you're going to get 30 or 40 IP tops probably. So your progression of your character is going to slow. And then on top of all of that, you are quite possibly, as I mentioned before, going to have people gunning for you that weren't gunning for you before. So there is one of 2 outcomes here that inevitably happen. And this is something where, like, if I see it happen once where the players say, fuck this, we're out, we can't do this. If I see it happen once and I agree with the judgment call, I won't say anything, I'll just let it happen and, play out the consequences as appropriate. However, if we get to a point where it happens a second time and the players are asking to run the fuck away, and I'm like, all right, so let's talk about this. You ran away the last time, you're running away this time. Your characters would know, and you, again, keep it within the context of the game. Your characters know that if they run from this will likely put a black mark on your record with fixers in the city. And the ones that are going to get good, high-paying jobs probably aren't going to talk with you. Not until you find a way to prove yourself beyond the black mark you're earning for yourself here. And then the more they continue to do it, the harder things get. And that's where I would then, if they then say, yes, we're going to run away, either right then, or then if they decide to do it one more time after that, me, the GM, will remind them, okay, like, Cyberpunk is a game about choices and consequences. Are we looking to have fun with this, understanding that that is the nature of the beast here? Because probably what I would have done as a GM beyond things here, like beyond the table itself, I would have probably picked gigs that were more softball gigs anyway at that point for them, like the Big Break or Wood Pirates or like Break the Box, like real softball gigs, right? That are like, they're not supposed to be deadly. And if they're still like, oh God, we're so afraid, it becomes more of a discussion about like, okay, like, well, you guys are wasting your own time as long as you're playing to like the climax beat before running, I guess you're not really wasting my time. But it's kind of like getting blue balled constantly when you're
yeah.
I want to see something cool happen, guys. Like, what the fuck? Come on, just do the cool thing. Like, it's right there. It's right there. And that can get really frustrating for you as a GM. So then it becomes a more frank conversation above the table about like, okay, look, guys, like this is the game you signed up to play. This is the game we agreed we were going to play. Why are we continuing to run? What are we afraid of? Like, and have a really frank discussion about like, what are your expectations? And then present them with like, this is the reality, right? And then it becomes a discussion of, do we want to continue doing this? And like, tell the story now of how you're going to work off 3 failed gigs that were failed solely by your choices. Or are we going to scrap this and maybe play a different game or build new characters because maybe the characters are the problem and try again with a different kind of group dynamic, right? Because there could be some of that getting in the way too. But it has to become a more frank conversation at that point, is my opinion.
Yeah. And I've had to have that conversation with players where, you know, Cyberpunk is you are not like you run away because you don't feel powerful. That feeling of being powerful comes from overcoming the challenge, from you know, taking down the corp that the suit that's got you guys hold by the ankle, or taking down the cyber psycho that is lurking the streets, or fighting off the cops. Like, you can't just keep running away because like it doesn't feel good for anyone.
Yep.
Because once I've hit the because like one time with the group I hit like that second time around, and it's just like, all right guys, what's going on? Let me look over here. Let me check in. Let's see. Nyla. Give me It's important to advertise the counters of deadliness to the game, flashiness of the content, and the thing is like I don't like the idea that your characters will die at the GM's whim, because Cyberpunk is a deadly game, but you can prevent it. That is part of the player agency, is you have the ability to prevent your death. Given it's not the same way to D&D, where you can just pop back up after going saying hi to the Grim Reaper for the 180th time. But
prior planning is going to prevent any kind of problem. That's the thing. Like, if you can think in advance of the challenge you might face, that is almost 100% of the time going to overcome whatever opposition you come across, or put you in a position at the very least where like you are even to it. You are at the level of meeting the challenge. I will say this, unless you're dealing with a hardened mini boss or something that has like a roll ability 6 and like base 16 combat skills and stuff like that, you do not need to be a particularly high rank edge runner to take those challenges on. Like, you can take on more than you think with the way NPC enemies are designed in the game. Like, it might sound scary and it will be intimidating, and as the meme goes, some of you may die, but that is a price you have to be willing to pay, because there is a narrative served by that too, because the consequences of that for everyone who survives is that there's a depth to their purpose now, and it's so cool because you get to have that story moment define something, right? Your death against the boss matters in some way, and when you re-roll a character, you're going to come onto a crew now that's lost somebody, and you can think a little harder about like, how do I want to fit on the crew knowing that this has happened, and like how do I want to shape the story moving forward? Death is not a bad thing. Death is something in Cyberpunk that if you're gonna die doing something really fucking cool, because that is 100% better than just dying meaninglessly.
I suppose another thing with player agency, well, improv tends to fall more towards the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Ask what's in the room. See if be resourceful. You have a whole list of skills. Don't be afraid to use the skills that you have chosen to improve your situation as well. I've had someone use paint to make something that was a murder look more like an accident.
Yep. Well, there's a really great way to approach this too, where like GM might describe the scene you're walking in on. Like we had this happen one time where I was a player. It was in my first campaign actually that I ever played. We're on a boat, and there was I forget quite what the context was for it, but we were looking, I think it was for a flare gun. And we're like, well, every ship would probably have a flare gun on board somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, well, we walk back into like the wheelhouse. Is there a flare gun mounted on the wall? Because I would assume there would be. And our GM kind of like thought for a second. He's like, you know what? You're probably right. There probably would be. So yeah, there's a flare gun there. So like, don't be afraid to offer a suggestion to us, like, yeah, what logically might be there. Like that is actually, like, I would say a really good way of like helping your GM fill the scene, because like we're not going to think of every little detail. Like most of the time we're painting fairly broad strokes with the narrative we're giving you, and some of those skill checks, or even just you prompting us like, does X exist in the scene, is like cause for us to think on whether that's like something we're just willing to allow. Like, yeah, you're right, absolutely, a first aid kit would probably be stashed here somewhere. Or if we have to make you roll for it or check luck against it or whatever, there's all kinds of ways we could do that, but your input is the impetus for doing any of it.
Let's see, what other good thing? Yes, one of the other things with player agency I found is being the ones to go out and find trouble. Don't be afraid to get out there, go hustle for the money. Go out and go bother a fixer you haven't, met yet. Don't sit around and wait for, regular Joe to finally call you back 5 days later. Hey guys, I got another job. It only pays like $500, but you need some money, right? I don't know. Maybe, go take a little trip down one block. You might run into the king himself. Or, take a trip out to one of the bars. I mean, hell, that's how my group has stumbled across 3-Piece. I didn't even know the guy existed until we came wandering into Short Circuit. It's like, oh, these people exist. Okay. Or, even, encountering the Anderson gang. Sometimes you got to get out there and just be like, GM, was wondering, instead of like any jobs, can we please go out and go look out there and see what's out there? And that's totally fine. And you can, and I seen like for example here, and Law and Disorder tonight, I wasn't planning on them taking this one. I to be honest, I was not planning on them going on the hunt for Deus. But I guess that's the end game you guys want. So
it's such a tantalizing morsel. How could I not? Like yeah. Rogue AI in Night City and 8-Bit is obsessed with the old net and all of that. So I'm like, I could not say no to that.
I don't know if like Max and Deus are Rogue though.
They're close enough to being it though. They're Rogue AI waiting to happen in that regard, right?
Yeah.
Or like they still fit the bill close enough that 8-Bit as a person is interested in that. And those are the kind of stories I also like as a player. So I'm like, I'm going to pursue the hell out of that. You kidding me? That's a great lead. And it also gives me a lot of leverage over a corporation, which of course is something that 8-Bit's like, oh, I get to lord my power over a corp. 100% I'm going to do it. 100%. But that is like, your players will sometimes tug the lead and just say, all right, we're going this way now. And it's like at the end of the session at this point, so it's not in the scope anymore of like, what did I prep as a GM? It's about, oh shit, where are we going next? And like, you maybe have only just started to prep it, and you're like, oh, they're going a completely different direction than I thought they would. Well, awesome, cool. Like that happened to me Monday too on Neon Inferno. Same kind of difference. We're like where we're going hasn't changed. The context we're going in under has changed completely now. Because like the adversary group that was going to present problems for the players inside the market have now become their allies, albeit like hesitant allies, you know. But that changes everything that I have prepped now. So I'm like, oh my god, I did not think you guys would like put all that together to be like, we're gonna leverage this. And I'm like, that's so cool. That's one of my favorite things about when players do something like that, is like it causes you to have to think and reframe your preconceived notion of like what a scene or a scenario looks like from the outside. That's the biggest thing I think, that like when it comes to your players' agency, always be open to them wanting to pursue their personal agendas, because like this technically, like what we did tonight, falls under 8-Bit's personal agenda. It's like he wants to hunt down AI elements and he wants to like understand them better. The second thing is never be afraid of using your characters' like their backstories, their life paths against them. Like throw a personal enemy in there, throw one of their friends or lovers into peril, you know, like make it personal for them, because the more personal something's been made for them, one, the more they'll surprise you, and two, the more often that they will go along with what you're saying, because they don't want to say no, because they're like, I understand this is like really important.
I suppose another thing with player agency, and while I'm all for players you know, saying they have these like specific items that are more like the mementos to them, you know, that's nice and all, but I'm sorry, Rocker Boy, no, you cannot have, you know, a $30,000 vehicle show up as a part of your backstory. Like there is a limit to what player agency can and cannot do, and I have to look at that. Like, where do we put
you get the $30,000 vehicle with one small exception here, or one small notable little thing. It's broken as shit. It's missing its whole engine. The engines are incredibly hard to come by. Arguably, they're worth about as much as the car would normally be. But sure, you can have a junked up like car from your backstory. Maybe your dad was a car guy. You're like a nomad or whatever. And like your dad was a car guy. This is broken as fuck. So like now you're trying to repair that as part of your core story. That's part of your agenda. That's cool. That's how we make it part of it. But yeah, you're not going to get a free $30,000 car. Like that's not happening.
Like that is a nomad specific like thing that, you know,
well, it could be anyone with a nomad background even though. Like it doesn't have to be a nomad in role. It could literally be like, I am a solo, but my background is my parents were reclaimers and I have one of their old cars, but it burned out a long time ago. Like its engine is totally shot. The, you know, transmission needs replacing. You know, the suspension springs are totally gone. Like it's a sub quest within the gig, or the you know arc of my character to rebuild this thing from the ground up, and it's about the character growth that comes with that. You absolutely could build a character like that, and I think that that's honestly really cool. That's a cool development path to take.
Trying to think what other things. And I suppose some of the other things that I've seen out there, like players, no issue with getting creative. I've had someone though ask if they could be a AI riding around in a meat suit, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to. I don't know if that's a way I want to approach that topic.
Right.
Just because like some of the interesting problems it does pose are there, but at the same time, when does it turn into, by the way, I can just hack things remotely? By the way, I have quick hacks now. Like,
right, in the time of the red
snowballs into.
Well, and I would this is the other thing that kind of stems off that same general problem. If you're gonna say when you start the game off that you're the child of some big name person from the lore, it's how are you making that story interesting? Like this is a game where, and this is partly GM fiat, but I will say this: any Cyberpunk RED GM that I've met worth their salt, they've gotten really good at saying yes to deals that their players think sound really good on first examination, and twisting them in ways that the player never saw coming. So for example, if ever you come to my table and you want to make some really bold claim, like your character is the child of Hanako Arasaka or something, and you were banished to Night City or whatever, but you still have sway with the Arasakas, well, sure, great. Not going to do you much good in Night City to start with. Danger Gal's probably going to look for you, especially if you gain a reputation that comes out.
As well.
Militech could as well, depending on like what sort of gigs you take and if you are working with or against them in the grand scheme of things.
FIB.
Yeah, I discovered somewhat recently the FIA.
FIA.
FIB is what I called them, and I'm going to stick with it. I stick with the bit because it's my game, god damn it. But it's technically FIA, but
it's a fib.
But yeah. Well, and it works really well. I'm like, god damn, this is. Why didn't you call them the FIB? Like, this is just such a good name for that.
Actually, I think FIB is that's from GTA 5. Actually,
that probably is but bottom line is this: like, there are people who are going to be very interested in you, and they'll want to use you as a bargaining chip. And your GM, if they're worth their salt, they'll know this. They won't let you get a free lunch. There is no free lunch in this game in that regard, right? You don't get to socially power game by saying, well, my mom is someone really important. It's like, okay, great. You're a hostage then. Have fun. Like, or you are a target for being made into a hostage. Have fun with that. Or you're a target for assassination by the powerful corps who want to root out and burn out every single potential Arasaka operative on mainland US soil. Good luck. Like, so this is another thing I will say to any budding GMs. If the player makes a really ludicrous request, first think of how you might twist it on them before saying no. Think of it like someone trying to cast Wish in D&D and how you are going to monkey paw the shit out of their wish. Do the same thing here. And if you can't think of a good way to monkey paw it, then maybe reject it or say, let's rethink this another way, because that isn't really going to tell an interesting story. Because that's really what we're trying to do with the games like this, right? It's like, we want the story and the consequences it presents to be interesting and novel, and we want them to say something more than just, I'm the son of someone powerful, look at me be powerful. Like, that's not interesting. It's interesting when you rise to meet that. That's why, like in season 1 of Neon Inferno, where we had daughter of a corpo come to resist her father, hate him, and like the finale was partly her getting her final vengeance on that guy was really powerful, and it was an interesting story because it's not, this privilege isn't true privilege. It's a ball and chain the whole way up to that final confrontation.
I suppose also on top of that, though, do work with what you're comfortable with at that time being. It could always be an idea that could be revisited later, but I do advocate, for, don't say no first, but at the same time, make sure it is something that would work at your table and something that you'd be comfortable with having going on at your table. Like, if you're not ready to explore that topic yet, that's okay. Maybe that's a next campaign kind of thought.
100%. Well, and you are only able to tell as interesting a story as you feel capable of doing. This is also something to remember. So, like, the sorts of things I would accept now with a, monkey pawing it, 4 years ago, when I was really new to things, I probably wouldn't have said yes to some of the things I'd say yes to now, just because I didn't have the understanding of, like, the world and the rules and all of that to, like, really color it in a way that tells an interesting story. So yeah, don't be afraid of shutting someone down if it's a story you're not prepared to approach or a subject matter you're not prepared to approach, or don't feel like you would do a good job of, like, really doing the story that presents justice. It's okay to not have that figured out.
All right. Suppose another thing that needs to be mentioned as well. When it comes to player agency, players, don't be afraid to progress your backstory in a way that works for you, because we're not afraid to use it against you either. Make that call to that ex that, like, for example, one of the people in my paid groups made a call to an ex who happens to be a netrunner who's very, very bright at what she does. They probably had one of the nastiest breakups of the 3 breakups that, or like the 3 exes that he has. But, he had to swallow his guts and, make that phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning because, hey, we're in trouble and I need help.
It's an interesting story. It's a really interesting story. When spurned lovers turn into the last refuge of help you can look for. That's a beautiful, beautiful story.
And of course, you got your friends. You lean on your friends. Lean on those contacts, and also collect contacts over time. Like, it's on you to decide that you're adding this person to your contacts. And I suppose when it comes to exploring new character concepts, make sure that, like, the character you play does not impact other players negatively. So, for example, my fixer in Emmerron's paid game is Skimmer. Like, the name already just makes her sound a little sleazy.
Right. Well, and we've already, she and I have already had a couple of discussions about like what is and isn't in bounds for the character in that regard because of that.
Like, I'm not gonna be one where I negotiate. I'm not, because, like, a thought I had was, because it was just like, it would be evil, but I'm probably not going to do this because that's a bit of a dick thing to do. Negotiate the extra pay. That's my service fee. Thanks. Instead of everyone making a nice extra $100 on the 1,000 eddies because of the 10, or is it 20% increased? I think it's 20%.
I think it starts at 10 and then it goes up to 20 as you progress your ranks, but I could be wrong about that.
I think 10% is for your buy sell. For negotiating
you might be right.
Job pay is up to 20%. So you
Yeah,
know,
you may be right. Well,
Yeah.
but it's based on job difficulty.
Yeah.
Like you can't negotiate
Easy
higher
is not.
difficulty jobs without role rank up
Yep.
to a certain extent. Yeah,
I know you
that's
can
what
do
it was.
double for dangerous at rank 10, but like
Right.
I
Yeah.
wasn't going to take the extra money off the top that way. Like that's a bit of a
Right.
dick move to everyone else. However, I will not be above charging a nice little 10% finder's fee for anything that my players need. It's just like, look, you want me to find it? I need money.
Right. Well, but then it becomes a matter of like you're still paying. You're just basically paying for the access to the item at that point, which is fine. Like that's not really that antagonistic. That's my main criteria at my table. And everyone, this is something where I think most GMs are gonna have different lines in the sand. They're gonna probably average out to roughly the same territory, but like the number one question I ask is, if I were another player at the table, and I had one of the other players tell me this was how they were doing something, how would it make me feel? And under what circumstances would I feel better about it? For example, like with Diamond, what I had her do is ask our group, like, are you okay with me doing this? Because I'm like, if I were asked that question up front and then was told when I bought something like, yep, and my finder's fee is this, no problem. Because I've agreed to that now tacitly. I've said, yes, this is okay. And you're just holding me to the standard that I have agreed to. Totally fine. If it got dropped on me out of nowhere, that would probably be a little different. And that's where I'm like, that's where that discussion led, just as an example. But yeah, like communication is a good thing.
The only reason I talked to Emmerron first about this was just to get the GM's like thoughts before, because at the end of the day I was still going to ask the party. It was just what would be the best idea to bring to the table at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and that's always where I say, like, trust in each other. Like, players need to trust their GMs, and the GMs need to trust that their players have the right intent in mind, right? Like, they're not trying to screw each other over, or they're not trying to be bad faith people to each other at your table. We're all trying to have the same fun game at the end of the day. We're trying to have a good time. That's the end goal for everybody. So
I think we've got that one pretty well wrapped up, and that's 42 minutes. Do we want to tackle questions, or do you have anything else in mind for player agency?
I will say the one last thing about player agency, because Nyla brought this up in a slightly different context earlier, but I feel like this can be expanded upon a little bit, and I think it's worth mentioning to people. Players do not forget that eddies are for more than just buying equipment. And what I mean by that is that, sure, you can buy services and stuff with them, like transport or whatever. You can also buy other people's services, though. And by that, I mean, like, buy a netrunner for a gig, or even playing your own gigs. Like, if you get a ton of money and you're like, damn, like, I need this thing done, like, and it's an intangible, like, I need to kill this person. And I know that to do it, we'll probably need to hire a solo to like cover our asses, because we don't have that skill set properly covered in our group. You can pay for that solo. You can run the spec, give them the gig, and then have them help you during the gig. So players, think of the ways that, like, you can also influence the world. You could also, this is a reason why I say, talk with your GM about the cool stuff you want to do, because your GM might come back to you and just say, oh, that sounds like you want to plan a gig like around that. Is that the case? And if you say yes, the GM can just plan that gig to happen and you're the one running that gig, right? You're the one calling the shots for that gig, and the GM's role in that then becomes to build out what the area looks like, or like the buildings and the theater of operations for that gig are going to be, the kind of strength of the enemies there. But yeah, if you just give them the prompt for like, here's the thing I want to do, or even like, this is kind of where I would imagine it would be, just kind of based on my life path or whatever. I don't want to speak for Diamond, but I think it's safe to say that Diamond, you'll agree with me saying we eat that shit up. We love that.
Mm-hmm. I love seeing when players take these things into their own hands. I would rather that you guys, call the shots and, roll things the way you want, see how your plans lay out, rather than, I write up something and it goes to the wayside because like you guys were not ready for it. And, as much as Black Chrome is nice, did you know that there's this great book called Danger Gal Dossier? You could go over there. Hell, Tales of the Red Street Stories. Maybe you've encountered, for example, John Doe. Emmerron, you guys had John Doe hired for a mission, correct?
Yep, we did 100%. Yep. Yeah, there's a whole chapter. Well, it's usually at the end of each mission, but there's a whole chapter of biographies in the back of Tales of the Red Street Stories that, like, I don't know if I'd recommend players read that section because it can kind of be a spoiler for certain things.
Yeah.
There are some notable characters back there that I know their biography absolutely spoils some of the gig. That said, GMs out there, if you read that and your player's like, yeah, I'm looking for a character that can do these kinds of things to support us on our next gig, would there be any people I would know? That is yet another resource that you can draw from to give them a name and then hook them into potentially running a gig that character is part of, and play the angle a little differently. So like, maybe if they've encountered John Doe before, the mission he shows up in the book, which I won't give the name of because suspense, the mission he shows up in the book, maybe he's approaching it more as a trusted coworker rather than an unknown face that has a reputation behind it, which is kind of how he's presented in the mission as a default when you encounter him. So like, you get these relationships built with the characters that you otherwise wouldn't encounter until these other pre-written gigs. And then if you run them later after you already build a relationship with those characters have a personal bond to you. You feel more personally attached, and your players are going to exert a lot more agency over like the way they want to approach it, because their mind will already be thinking of, well, like, I have a friend in this already, or at the very least an associate that I've worked with in the past that's like giving me already a bit of an advantage because they maybe are already privy to other aspects of this that we weren't briefed on, or met with different people than we did. All of that kind of comes into play when you do that, which is, I love doing that. It is a terrific way to kind of handle things.
And, like, for example, I as Diamond, when I was playing as Diamond, as, my character before, she became, my online persona, basically, I've hired Red Eye to go on runs with me. It's just like, hey, here's $500. Can you come with me to go crack a network? And, just an extra set of hands to handle this. Because networks don't reset when only one person leaves the net.
Yep. So that can absolutely make or break a gig. I know I know this last week on Neon Inferno, they were looking so hard to hire anyone that could help Nyla with the network. Damn. They're like, anybody, please.
Cough, cough. Hack, hack. It looks like I can't come to work Monday. Nyla, you want a second Wirehead?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and it's one of those. It's one of those things that where they were looking all over. They're like, "Will you help us?" It's like, "Well, will you pay me?" Well, we're broke. Okay, then no. Like, until eventually they kind of had to make the deal with Danger Gal to be like, "All right, like here's what we know." It's like,
working
cool.
with Pantera.
You found a netrunner who's willing to help you. Downside, she's really, or they in
Yeah.
Pantera's case, they are very prickly.
Yes, they are.
Think they are much better than you are. Like,
I mean, Pantera is a librarian. What can I say? They kind of got that personality about them.
right. Like it was good, but yeah, it leads to that like, well, you didn't have enough to pay anyone, so the only person you could ask is the people that like otherwise would have been your adversaries in this, because you've got goals here that might clash more than they cooperate, which is tremendous. Like from just the story intrigue sense of it, it gets very interesting. I'm a big fan of that.
All right. So I think we knocked question 1 out. I was just kind of looking over there. Are we ready to go to Q&A? Because it looks like we've only got like 3 remaining.
Yeah, and guys, if you are watching and you have questions for us, whether they are part of what, send them through chat if you're here live. If any of you are listening to this on a recording, either on YouTube or on Spotify, you on Spotify, you specifically should have a questionnaire that you could fill in with questions or topics you want us to cover in the show in the future. We also have an email address, wireheadspod@googlegroups.com. If you send us an email there, we can answer your question on the following week or a future week. But
folks send me questions on Discord, and I'll throw them in here.
Yep. DM us. We both our DMs I think are open. So like, if you have a question, definitely don't be afraid to DM us. We would love to answer your question in a future episode. But yeah, let's go ahead and start. So Nyla asked, in your experience, have you ever had your players go a direction you didn't expect and that had improved the narrative of the gig? Yeah, a lot actually. Diamond, have you ever had this happen to you?
Yes, I have actually. This had to do with a gig that I was running involving well, I ran this one actually here a couple days, well, not a couple days, couple of paid sessions ago, in regards to the players deciding that instead of taking their original planned approach of sneaking in at night to acquire this project from Biotechnica, and that has a neural link with AI mounted on it. Long story short, they are we could 3D print body parts. Why not make a functioning person out of it? And well, they decided to take a route to go into this convention, show up at near the end of the convention, like right before night crew comes in, when day crew is tired, and they showed up in high-vis vests, hard hats, and all that, and they wandered their way in. Nobody seemed to really pay attention. Nobody paid them any mind. And like, I saw this approach, and I was just like, there's no way this is gonna work. But I gotta say, it was great, it was comical, and they didn't actually get caught. Had they took the night route, they would have been dealing with a lot of security personnel who have been like, who's breaking in? Nobody suspects the janitors. And it's just like, damn. Like, I
really
love that.
Smart.
It was such a vast improvement in a route that I wasn't expecting them to take.
There was a gig my players ran once where the goal was to steal some expensive liquor out of a like a club that was having a grand opening, and the kind of the intended route was based on kind of the way they were approaching it was kind of like, oh yeah, you have someone in the DJ, spot, like running things or whatever, or like they're the entertainment for the night, and then it leaves an opening for the others to kind of quietly take out the opposition, like the guards and stuff, and then break into this vault and steal stuff. My players had a med tech on the team though, and they asked the question, what if we poisoned some of the liquor being served to guests instead? And I'm pretty sure the gig went off without a single shot being fired. And they got in and out, no problem, because everyone was like just puking and having a really awful time as the poison kind of took effect. It was really something. But it just made the narrative so much stronger, because at the end of the table, like, I was like, this is not something that was like I was prepared for, but fuck it, we ball. And like at the end of that gig, everyone was high-fiving each other. Everyone felt they had a role to play. And it was like an Ocean's 11 moment. It really was beautifully done. And that's the sort of thing I've seen quite a bit of in like Neon Inferno 2, like where there's like characters that the players want to negotiate with in order to like achieve a particular outcome or gain a certain kind of leverage for later. And like their paths I didn't write in necessarily, but they, for their existence, they made the story much richer for their being there. Just because they've expanded out like some of these narrative pathways that I really didn't prepare for. And it anytime you have a greater amount of detail in a scene and everyone cares about that detail, it's better. It just is. Like the narrative gets better every time that happens without fail.
All right. Next question. What do we got? What do we got?
How can I build out a better night market as a rank 6 fixer? I'm pulling up the rank, the role rank for that, just so because I'm learning fixer.
I think I know who asked this. I think this was one of the people that asked me about this. Person in question is playing fixer, and they noticed that like the whole like setting up a night market, like setting up a night market was a very limited stock, and it's just like this isn't even stuff that I even push, and like the stock is so limited that this is probably not even stuff that my fellow players want, and how do I make money off of this thing? So I suppose this probably wouldn't be a bad thing to discuss. So of course, typical night market, when you generate a night market, you are given a D6 table, and you have to roll for a couple different categories, just to figure out what you got. You got some really useful categories like weapons and armor and cyberware. And then you have others like clothing and fashion wear and food and drugs. Which I guess like I don't want to sneeze on those, but at the same time I can understand that they can be a little limiting upon first look. But I suppose the other question is, are you only setting up a night market for your fellow players? Or are you setting it up for your community? Because other people are going to need to come in, and they probably aren't coming in trying to buy, the latest assault rifle from Militech, but they probably could use some pigs.
I have a hot take here.
What's up?
The tables at the end of the book, as they're described, I believe, and I'm going to double check this while I'm saying this, but I believe that night markets, as described at the end of the book, um, is yeah. So they're just those tables are just to build a night market on the spot. In other words, if you, the GM, are making a night market that is not governed by a player, and you need that night market generated, that's where you'll roll that. If you, as the fixer player character, though, are rolling a night market up, you can choose to an extent, because part of the stipulation there is, one, you're working with other fixers of your rank or lower, and two, you have access to super luxury items at that time from anybody. Like, you just know where those things are. So this means that if your players are after something and you are setting up that night market in part to gain access to those items, you can like look for them.
Yep.
And those things for that night market are within your reach. So you can just get whatever you want.
And also on top of that, for fixers making money here, honestly, like for me, I do think fixers can walk away with a decent amount of money in their pocket. Usually I'll see like how successful the market was, and usually at a bare minimum, fixers you're at least walking away with $500 in your pocket after all the fees have been paid and all the help has been squared away. You're walking away $500 richer. Sometimes you walk away $5,000 richer, depending on how successful that market is, who you know. So maybe you are, a rank 6 fixer and you want tech at your market. You go over to Short Circuit, go knock on the door, go upstairs, go talk to 3-Piece and get something squared away there.
Yep.
Or perhaps you need some vehicles showing up. Hopefully you have wood chipper on the line.
Yep. 100%. I think it's all about expanding your definition of what's possible with a night market, because the biggest thing is you've basically got unlimited reach during a night market. So you just can get stuff. Like, there's technically no limit. The only thing that the night market table is in the back of the book for is so that a GM can generate one that an NPC is running, because they're just going to grab whatever, right? Like, you don't know the goals of whatever crew they're part of or the organization that they are like typically supporting. You don't know any of that. And so like, and if you do, then to GMs, what I would suggest here as additional advice is don't be afraid to pick a category if you know a fixer is particularly suited to it.
Yep.
So a great example of this would be that like wood chipper, for example, might have a lot of survival gear. And so that's going to be one of the categories at wood chipper's night market. Or like 3-Piece would have weapons. Probably a lot of cyberware. So like you pick cyberware. And then roll the other category or two, depending on like how many categories you want to be at your market. But yeah, you do that, and then from there, then you roll quantities and stuff and do that. But in doing that, at least, because if your players know that a particular fixer is like well suited to the sort of thing they're looking for, and they know that person well enough to like say, hey, when's your next night market going to be? They can make a plan to try and attend that person's night market specifically. And like, it gives them a little bit of narrower control over maybe chancing into some of those high ticket items that they've been hunting for, without getting the finder's fee, charge up that the fixer normally would have.
I suppose another thing that should be taken into consideration when you are organizing a night market, and I do this for any fixers that are setting up night markets at my table. For me, again, if you consider like your neighborhood, like for example, like Skimmer, She lives in, the college cargo bay. College students need clothes. College students need food, drugs. That's gonna be stuff that she'll be probably pushing. Probably also personal electronics too. That's gonna be stuff that she'll be looking for, and that'll really determine how well it goes. Also, night markets can be great for kicking up a plot point with a rival gang coming into town and smashing up a market, or of course the cops. They get a little too nosy. They catch wind of what you're up to. Now you gotta deal with that.
Well, and one more piece of advice I can offer then as well is if your players ever look at a night market, like the menu of a night market you've set up, and all of them are like, well, that sucks because like almost nothing on here looks that appealing. Remember that they're also gathering spots for information and stuff. Yep. So what you could pose it as is, sure, maybe the item you were looking for specifically isn't at this night market, but because of all the people gathered there, you might be able to get a rumor, about like, oh, this is where it's going to, we've already heard, we have some supplies coming in off of the open road. They're coming in through the Badlands, or, oh yeah, there's a pack of Thelus nomads that already have that on a cargo ship, and they're shipping that back here right now. They should be here in a week or two. And I'll make sure to hold like a bodyweight suit aside for you or something, And so then, or, then they can get discussion about like, well, we know where some of this is cached. Only problem, it's defended by some automated defenses from the Fourth Corporate War that we don't have the resources to send anyone in to get it. So here's the thing. I will put a gig together, and if you guys want to go in and get the stuff and just deal with the problem that you're going to face there, you get it for free, and I'll even pay you on top of it because all the other stuff's going to make me a shitload of money. I just haven't had the time to get a crew out there. But like, if you guys can get there and you're willing to do the work, I'll pay you with the item and, whatever the appropriate eddy payment, like 1,000 eddies or whatever. And you turn the night market into like the nightclub of the evening, right? Where everyone's kind of gathered and you're taking a job from it. Because that aspect of it is equally important in my opinion.
Also, with people that are much bigger night markets, like rank 7, rank 8, 9, they might have bigger bustling markets that might take up whole alleyways. And it may not show up on your C-book, but maybe there's that one person who set up a booth that they're not supposed to be there, but they just might have what you're looking for. Just takes enough luck to find it. Maybe, you're passing by and somebody's got that specific shirt that you've been wanting. Or maybe they might have a rifle for sale. Hell, you could probably swap shit at night markets as well. Someone's got something you want, you have something they want. I'm pretty sure you could probably find a trade agreement.
Yeah. Barter in the time of the red is a big thing. Like swapping goods for goods can absolutely happen. Like those are night markets are like 1 part flea market, 1 part swap meet. So like you can just kind of get together and swap shit around if you don't have the money.
Last but not least, now I understand you're rank 6, but at some point you're going to be able to assemble midnight markets. That's right. Where you get some real big ticket items. Of course, you're looking for that Malorian Arms 3516. Mr. K probably has one. Hopefully you got the scratch to hand over for it. Perhaps you're looking for looking to get an audience with someone that the only time they come down to the street is once a year when this guy is having his midnight market. That's your opportunity to go. But, midnight markets are rare. They are hard to land and pretty much most of the time invitation only.
Mm-hmm.
So, but also you probably score some really, really nice gigs from people that, the only chance you may have met them is at this night market. Oh, goodness. So, on top of that, reach out to your fellow fixers. Reach out to, other sources that you know. Hell, all that junk that, or all that other stuff that you, if you're one of those kinds of fixers that you've picked up and salvaged off of people, you got yourself a little extra capital up front for that market.
Yep. But yeah, no, you can do a lot. You can do a lot with a fixer. I think it's just there's a lot of soft power that fixers wield. Mm-hmm. And I think like that gets overlooked a lot because you're looking at just the game mechanics and not like what they imply. Because a lot of Cyberpunk RED is like in the fine details there. It's reading between the lines a little bit.
And then I think what else with fixers in their night markets. And at the end of the day, also, this is a place for you to, get your reputation going. If you pull a real good night market with some real good big ticket items, you could score yourself a nice little bit of rep for it.
Yeah. So the next question we have here is, my friends like Cyberpunk, but how can I capture that intrigue and noir my private eye player? So recommendation number one, place. So there's a lot to do with investigation, obviously, when you have that kind of thing. So your development beats should be full of a ton of clues, and those clues should all lead down different branching paths. Like when this is where like a flow chart really helps, because this is the gig I'm writing right now is an investigation. So the way you do this is your flow chart should look like one of those red string boards where you've got like a bunch of cork boards with like things pinned up and then red thread connecting them all. That should be how the investigation looks when you put all your beats together. And each like beat layer, we could call it, right? Like you've got like 3 different beat ones that could all happen like at roughly the same time. But those 3 beats should all lead down to the next layer, and all of the beats below should be attainable one way or another from all the beats represented on the first level. So like, but it'll all just depend on what clues you pick up on. So in those kinds of things, the way you build noir is, one, your development beats should all have the ability to link to every beat underneath them, right? Like your second tier of beats. The second thing is your cliffhanger beats, the things where you're not sure what's going to happen, shouldn't just be combat. Your first cliffhanger beat after your development has started should be like a tense social encounter and have it be like a form of social combat, where what you're checking for isn't so much did the players get defeated and killed as much as it is did they win over the cooperation of a force that isn't maybe their true enemy, but they don't like the players or they don't agree with what the players are doing for some reason. And then like the cliffhanger determines how much are you able to pull out of those people informationally, and what openings does that then create for your next level of developments. And then that's kind of, you keep doing that until and all the investigations are gonna always have a few different ways that they can end. So I will say they're a lot more work to put together if you want it to be really satisfying, but it is very cool to kind of see like how those gigs can be replayed a bunch. Like you can run the same investigation gig for multiple groups, and each time they could pick a different path. Or if not, like they don't necessarily pick a different starting point, they'll find a different path partway down that they'll run through, and they'll have a totally different experience of it than that first group did. Like Blade Runner proves this constantly. I would also recommend looking to Blade Runner if you want to plan those a lot, because they do a really good job of building out cases.
If you are a new GM, I think I remember who you are. When you're listening to this, if you are a newer GM, I would recommend Tales of the Red. Agents of Desire is a really good, but also it's a really good one for this. Of course, you get to meet everybody's favorite queen bitch, Rogue. But
yeah,
that one right there, I would highly recommend for an investigation.
There's a Scream sheet too. One of the free Scream sheets that we got for Halloween this last year. I think it's Werewolf in Night City. I think is the name of it. That's a really solid investigation Scream sheet as well. If you want to see something that's both free and accessible, that's a tremendously good investigation Scream sheet. And finally, there is the investigation at the end of Danger Gal dossier known as The Incident.
Very good.
That is also a very good investigation. And all of those are going to kind of capture elements of what I just discussed. Like in almost all of those, the first stop is usually a clue gathering spot of some kind, which branches you into different leads on the first cliffhanger, which then branches you into different kind of ways to resolve the overarching conflict when you get to that point near the end.
So something else that I would recommend when it comes to if we look back at like some of the old detective movies out there, sometimes when in like these like noirs that I've seen, the private eyes, they will find something, and it's just like it will hit them in a very personal way that it doesn't tie them into the case, but it makes this case, it will open up like, I assume this is it'll open up the media's eye to something else that they may have been missing, that like these clues didn't mean this, it actually meant this. And a one red herring is okay. Don't throw a shit ton in there. One red herring, and put it at a spot that might still lead to something that might be valuable.
My favorite thing to do with red herrings is that they shouldn't totally derail or be like a complete false positive for the group, but it should increase the complexity of the case they're trying to solve. So like in the one I'm writing in Pay to Win, there's a beat where the players can get one name for a potential culprit, and when they go to investigate that name, they find out that it's actually more complicated, and that he's actually not really the one to blame for what's happened, that lies with a different person. He is the one to offer that second name up when they get to that point. But if they don't see that beat, they can solve it more quickly, right? So it's like it's a partial derailment, and it adds like a different sort of problem, different layer of problem to the adventure that they otherwise wouldn't get. But it makes for a more interesting story at the other side. It's not a total waste of time.
And I suppose something else that's included in like what I've seen in some of these detective movies is it's always a race against the clock. There is someone else there is opposition that is either trying to cover it all up before it's too late, or it's going to be too far gone before you can catch it. And Blade Runner has this thing called the countdown that when you guys look at this, when you're writing these, is if your crew has discovered this event doesn't happen. Like, they've prevented something tragic from happening. They were able to, catch like this mook in time to the big bad guy. Well, that means your witness doesn't get killed before, you know, they're able to talk to you. So on and so forth.
Yep. 100%. Well, and and it can range to, like, the impact can be something like your fixer calls you after you've started the investigation because they're being harassed by someone more powerful who has a vested stake, and they're getting anxious because of how long things are taking. Like, it could be something like that. Or you could have it layer in where, like, you know, partway through, your fixer gets kidnapped. So you go to report in your findings on something. Their automated agent AI picks up and is just like, yeah, so they're not available right now. They haven't been online in the last 48 hours. Assistance may be needed. And, you know, just like give your players a lead that then has them chasing their fixer down. Remember, without the fixer, they don't get paid.
Yep.
So the investigation's for nothing if the fixer doesn't survive.
And also at the end of the day, they need, like, put some tough decisions at the end of all of this. Like, sure, you could expose this guy for what he did, but what consequences would that have for you and for everyone else further down the line?
Yeah. A big element of noir is the struggle against the self.
Right versus good.
Yep. Like, what's morally right and what's legally the thing that, like, because, like, it's usually in like police films in a lot of cases for noirs, but like, but yeah, it's like the weight of principle versus the weight of, like, societal expectations or legal expectations. And, like, how the two juxtapose or work against each other. That level of complexity is great noir. It creates a great space for you to have, like, good storytelling involved and things like that. So yeah, that would be where I would start looking into that. But I cannot recommend highly enough that if those are the kinds of stories you want to tell, I highly recommend, if you've got some extra money to do so, look into Blade Runner, because it's got some fantastic systems that you can absolutely use for Red. If you read through that, they've got, like, a case generation system that is, like, honestly one of the most powerful tools ever. Like, Dice, Rob Barefoot over at Artel Sorian, turned me onto that way back when, and, like, that was a game changer for me, honestly. So highly recommend that to any GMs who want to write a ton of noir investigation. But then, okay, so the last question we have right now, and I think we'll probably have just some time to wrap this and then feel good about ourselves.
Sweet.
Can you integrate a player hustle into development of the current gig, like as part of a development or something? Yes, 100%. I've done it a ton, actually, where, like, or it's part of the epilogue of an earlier beat. So you get some closure from, like, you know, maybe part of your hustle is, you know, you went and did some, like, free clinic work, like if you're a med tech, for example, right? Well, maybe the free clinic work you're doing is helping the community you just rescued from an evil corporation. You know, like, some of the people that you're doing the clinic work for were some of the bystanders that were casualties of the armed conflict that happened between you and the other force. So you get to feel some of that community's gratitude reflected back on your character and get to revel in that growth. And then on the flip side, yeah, like, it can set up all kinds of stuff for the future. GMs, you could use that to, like, hint for future developments, like a scream sheet would normally. You can also use it as, like, yeah, like, instead of it being like an unrelated hustle, you do some of the prep work, and a part of that leads you into working for another fixer to stake out a place or whatever, and that brings you in your eddies, and then you learn something about the gig you're about to do.
I mean, Nomads, You may have reached a point where someone's like had to be retrieved after being rescued, and you are now taking them out to the edge of the city where they are getting picked up to get taken elsewhere. Rocker Boys, maybe a concert got a little too violent, and now another gang's got to pay because they fucked up your concert.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Yeah, you can do all kinds of interesting story development stuff with that, and it's like it doesn't even have to feel like the downtime thing where it's like, yeah, you do this unrelated thing. It's no, like if there's an option, I've always said this is one of the other golden rules that I always use when I'm writing Cyberpunk or even just improving Cyberpunk is if there is a way by which this is personal, make it personal. Like if there's a way that feasibly this could become a personal thing that like affects your player on a deeper level, make it work that way.
Hey, Uncle Larry, got some dirt on arrival and used it to score a bonus. Man, I really hope that bonus is paying off.
So far, it's been all right.
I mean, with everyone trying to crawl up your ass recently, I don't know.
Yeah, well, see, they haven't got me yet, though. They are still losing. I am winning. They are losing. That's the important thing. The scoreboard says everything.
I've had a media that their first week, like when they first showed up, their first week they weren't able to make it. So I thought, what, go ahead and side hustle, and then we'll bring you into the group. Okay, great. And they did a popular puff piece to get some cash, and the way to narrate it, it's like I slammed my laptop shut, and after a few minutes I open it up, I send my resignation in to N54. Fuck this. I'm going out to go do my own business.
Yeah, get their last paycheck and then just fuck right off. I love that idea. That's so cool, especially as an intro for a character, because that textures their approach to things so fucking well. I love that.
Some N54, scream sheet reporter, because who reads N54 scream sheets? You just go watch it at home. Turn on television, or turn on your agent. You'll get N54 right there. Why go to scream sheets? It's like, fuck it, I'll go write something interesting instead of whatever the hell this is.
Yeah, the pop media bullshit. Yeah. No, that's a very cool way though that you could link that in. Absolutely. It's like that, honestly, that kind of might be an interesting way to give everyone an intro story to just like the start of a campaign. Is have everyone roll one hustle and see what the last job they did right before coming to the table was. And then start tying narratives together. I love that. That's actually a really creative way you could use that. I might have to steal that for the future. That's a really good idea.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, you've got all kinds of tools. Don't be afraid to use them. If anything, tonight should hopefully have taught you guys a couple things about the power GMs have and the power players have in return to kind of meet out things and give you a lot to work with. And as long as you have trust in each other and communicate well, like the stories you'll tell are goddamn epic. They're so good. They're why I love Cyberpunk.
At the end of the day, communicate. Figure out, what works for all of you. And, also make sure this is something that y'all are enjoying. And, if you guys, aren't enjoying it, GM, player, hey, look, I understand this is something that's part of your shtick, but kind of need a change. Hastua, thank you so much for following. Welcome. But I think on that note, friends, unless we have any other announcements, which of course, Cyberpunk Edge Runner's Mission Kit, it is now on pre-order. Releases on DriveThruRPG on June 21st. Shipping happens on June 24th, correct?
So the digital release is June 21st.
Yep.
The physical starts shipment that following Monday, which is the 24th.
And also, on the 22nd, it's free RPG day. Go down to your favorite game store. And by the way,
get
Shadowscar Easy Mode. Go get it. It's good. It looks like a lot of fun.
Shadowscar Eyes in the Darkness. Well, you don't even have to say it looks like a lot of fun. You played it.
That's the joke. Eyes, looks. I'm sorry.
Yep. But yeah, Shadowscar Easy Mode or Eyes in the Darkness is the actual title of it. We played it on my channel as an early release thing, and it's so good. Like the fact that that's their first ever release of the game system, and it is free for the free RPG Day release, is it's great. Honestly, can't say enough nice things about it. So definitely, if you have the opportunity to go to a local game store, do it. It's gonna be such a good month for RPGs.
Yeah. By the way, of course, I did give Emmerron a shout out in my chat. Please do check both of our channels out. Highly recommend Emmerron and his crew on Monday nights for Cyberpunk Entertainment. Of course, I'm on every Wednesday night, and then in the future, we hope to see y'all. Okay. I think on that note, I'm Diamond Dust.
And I'm Emmerron.
Thanks for coming to Wireheads. Have a good night, folks. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.